This is Antonio at 120 miles, 120 miles. Do you copy, Black Flag Civilian?
Welcome, friends. I'm Black Flag Civilian, and I don't know about you, but most of my friends and family live outside the range of a handheld radio. If there's ever an emergency and the grid goes down, cell service, power, internet, all of it disappears, how in the hell are you going to reach your loved ones who live outside your immediate neighborhood? This is a problem that stumped me for years. Handheld radios have a limited range, especially in hilly or mountainous terrain. Even in ideal conditions, your handheld radios are only reaching 10, 12 miles tops, unless you're literally transmitting from a mountaintop. But I'm happy to announce I finally found a solution. We can now communicate regionally using these small, affordable HF radio boxes. If you're not sure what you're looking at here, let me explain. This is a portable, off-grid radio communications box using a small 5-watt HF radio. In here, you have everything you need to listen and transmit on the 40-meter band using a propagation technique called Near Vertical Incidence Skywave, or NVIS. I know that's a lot of jargon, and I'll explain the important parts later. For now, all you need to understand is this is a way to transmit regionally, roughly in the same distance in all directions. So imagine a giant circle with you at the center, reaching out 100 miles, 150 miles, potentially 200 miles or more. And somehow, all that capability costs right around $200 and fits inside a little Harbor Freight case. And if I sound a little dramatic right now, guilty, I am dramatic, but at least this time it's warranted, because before this class of little 5-watt HF radios came out, you would have to spend $600 rock bottom per person to get a portable regional comms box together. But now, as of 2025, heading into 2026, there are actually a handful of these small 5-watt HF radios out there for you to choose from. The one you'll be seeing in this video is called the True SDX radio, and it's an open source project, but you can buy them fully assembled for right around $120. And you can actually power them with these little $30 batteries. You'll need a few other small items to get on the air, but again, this is just a stupid, affordable way to get into HF radio. And you'd be surprised what you can accomplish with just 5 watts. Sure, there's less room for error. You're going to need a well-tuned antenna. It's going to help to operate from a location with a low noise floor. And using earbuds versus the built-in speaker will actually make a big difference. I have all sorts of tips I'll share with you later, but I want you to understand the context of why this is possible for so cheap, finally. In this video, I'm going to explain the very core basics of HF radio and the NVIS technique. Nothing too deep, just the big picture stuff. Then I'll go over the gear you actually need to make contacts using the NVIS technique. After that, we'll use our comms box to listen to some CW and voice traffic on the 40-meter band. And then we'll wrap up with a demonstration of our own. We've got a few Black Flag Civilian Discord members living about 60 and 120 miles away from me with identical comms boxes. And we're going to see what it sounds like when they transmit. Is it going to be loud and clear? Are we going to need the NATO phonetic alphabet to make sense of anything? Or will we hear nothing at all? Unfortunately, you'll have to suffer through the rest of this video to find out. Let's get started by talking about HF radio, what makes it unique from the handheld radios that most of you are probably familiar with. So what is HF radio, and how is it different from these little handheld radios that we've been using for years? All radio waves exist on a spectrum. And if I'm editing things right, you should see a spectrum on the screen right now. On the left, you have big, wide waves, and on the right, you have small, narrow waves. When you click the talk button and transmit on your radio, you are transmitting somewhere on the spectrum. And the size of these waves, how wide or narrow they are, makes a massive difference in how those waves travel. So this spectrum is broken down into smaller sections. The waves here on the right, what we call very high frequency and ultra high frequency, are restricted by a principle called line of sight, which is what it sounds like. Very simply put, hills, trees, buildings, anything between you and the other radio is going to make it more difficult for your signal to get through. In the real world, you're realistically getting 1 to 5 miles of range using these VHF and UHF frequencies at ground level. And then on the left, we have our high frequencies, what most people simply call HF. These are the kind of radio waves that bounce, skip, and hop around in the sky, eventually reaching down in Europe, or Australia, or Asia. Anywhere in the world, really. When you imagine an old Elmer in his Radio Shack yapping about the weather to a guy 3,000 miles away, this is the part of the radio spectrum that he's talking on. So why do we use the right side of the spectrum, these VHF and UHF frequencies at all, if HF reaches out so much farther? Well, there's a few reasons. Operationally, you don't necessarily want to reach out more than a few miles. But aside from that, the biggest reason relates to antennas. Remember those bands that I mentioned? The subdivisions in the radio frequency spectrum? Well, those bands are actually titled, like literally referred to by the size of their waves. For example, 10 meter, 20 meter, 40 meter, 80 meter. These are all specific ham radio bands, smaller subdivisions within the HF part of the radio spectrum. The reason all this matters, the lower you go in the radio spectrum, the larger the wavelength and the bigger the antenna you will need to talk on that band. So the 40 meter band that we're using today, we're actually using a half-wave dipole antenna, which is roughly a 20 meter antenna. You'll need that amount of flat open space, and realistically a little more, to actually deploy your antenna and get on the air. So while the comms box that I'm teaching you to assemble today is small and portable, HF antennas are bulky and take time to set up and take down. For this reason, you can't just walk around using your HF radio like you can your little Baofeng. Next up, we're talking about near vertical incidence skywave, what most people simply call NVIS. With all respects to the Elmers out there, I don't have any particular interest in hop, skip, and jumping my radio past my immediate surroundings to land somewhere in Europe. These hops are called skip zones, by the way. No, instead, I want my radio waves to hit down in the area immediately around me, so I can contact my friends on the other side of that mountain, or my family who lives 75 miles to the south. And there's one way to accomplish that reliably off-grid: NVIS. NVIS is a radio propagation technique. In layman's terms, that just means a particular intentional way of sending your radio waves out. The purpose of NVIS is to avoid skip zones, and instead send your signal in a nice even radius around your transmit location. And just so you understand how this is actually happening, the NVIS technique shoots your radio waves straight up into the sky. And then those radio waves bounce off the ionosphere and come back down evenly over your region. It will reach moderate distances, somewhere between 100 and 300 miles-ish, which is pretty damn far. But it's not going to hit the next continent or the other side of the world. And you don't need any fancy, expensive technology to accomplish NVIS. It's actually pretty simple. You just need to deploy your antenna in a particular way. I'll go over the details later, but you're actually going to pitch your antenna relatively close to the ground, which makes the whole small, portable NVIS comms box setup even more viable. The concept just works. One benefit of handheld radios is you don't have to think about the ionosphere. But when you're rocking HF radios, especially using NVIS, you have to know when the conditions up there in the sky are actually going to force your radio waves to bounce back down. Because if the conditions are wrong, your radio waves will just punch through into space and maybe end up in an alien civilization somewhere far, far away. Now again, explaining the way it works without getting too deep into the science, as we covered before, NVIS works by shooting your signal almost straight up in the air, where it hits the ionosphere and comes back down regionally. For that to happen, the ionosphere actually has to be able to bounce your signal back to Earth. It can, to be sure, but not 24/7. The way you figure out when NVIS will work is with something called an FOF2 number. The FOF2 number is basically a measure of the highest frequency the ionosphere can bounce a radio wave back down to Earth. If your transmit frequency is higher than the current FOF2 number in your area, then the signal, again, just punches through the ionosphere and disappears into space, instead of coming back down where you want it. Thankfully, FOF2 numbers are not totally random. It can vary a bit depending on where you live and what time of year it is, but generally speaking, there are windows of time, almost every day, when the conditions for NVIS are pretty good. Where I live, NVIS is usually best mid-morning and mid-afternoon. But for you to figure out the best windows in your region, you'll have to keep an eye on FOF2 maps. There are a few different sources for FOF2 maps online, but I usually go for the Australian space weather one. I should probably bookmark it, but honestly, I just go to Google and search FOF2 map multiple times a week. This is usually the first result. This is a free resource showing FOF2 numbers across the entire world, and it's constantly updating. Since we're using the 40 meter band, we want to see FOF2 numbers at or above 7 megahertz. So if I see that light blue, dark blue, or even better, those maroons and purples, then I know that NVIS is possible at that time. I may or may not make contact with my loved ones, but it won't be because the ionosphere told me to get stuffed. Before I get into the parts list, all the stuff you'll need to assemble your NVIS comm box on your own, I do want to quickly touch on some legal considerations. Transmitting on HF bands without the proper FCC license is not allowed under normal circumstances. And getting licensed does require scheduling and passing a knowledge test. I'll be honest, since they only reach out a handful of miles, I've been pretty loosey-goosey in the past when talking about these short-range, handheld radios and legality. But once you're talking about HF and sending out signals potentially hundreds of miles, that does warrant more discretion. The legal concept is actually pretty simple. In case of emergency, you should exhaust all normal means of communication first. But it is legal to transmit without a license in a genuine emergency when no other options are available. Beyond that, you're all adults. I'm here to explain what's possible and how these systems work, not to police anyone's behavior or make decisions for you. So with that, let's get into the parts you'll actually need to communicate off-grid, regionally, with your people. Okay, next up, I'm going to go over all the parts you'll need to assemble your own NVIS comms box. I'm going to start with what I'll call the core essentials. If this is all you've got, you can get on the air. But then I'll go over a few recommended accessories that will make it a lot easier for others to hear you clearly and for you to actually make sense of what other people are saying. I'll put links down in the description for those of you who don't want to do a ton of searching. First up, radio. As I mentioned earlier, the heart of our NVIS comms box is this 5-watt true SDX radio. This thing operates on a handful of different modes, but I don't know Morse code, so I'm only interested in voice. And it does come with a single sideband mode, a voice mode. And that's what we're using for our NVIS purposes. This particular radio is open source, which is very cool. But there are some approved makers, including one on Amazon. The downside is, there isn't really an instruction manual to speak of. If you want to learn how to use all the menu items, you're going to have to watch some YouTube videos. Thankfully, the way we're using it, mostly for a single purpose, it's pretty much set it and forget it. Other similar radios do exist. The QRP Labs QMX radio seems pretty great in particular, but they have a long wait time for assembled radios, so I went for the true SDX, since it's readily available for a team to adopt immediately, at least at the time of filming in late 2025. And we need to power our radio. So next, let's talk battery. The simplest, cheapest way that I found to power this radio is with these little Talent Cell brand batteries. Since they're only powering 5-watt radios, these little batteries will keep you on the air for some hours. I think most folks go for the smaller 3000 milliampere hour ones because they match the size of the radio pretty well. Those are 20 or 25 bucks. I went for the bigger one, 6000 milliampere hours, since it was only about $10 more, and it fits just fine inside the Harbor Freight case that I got to house everything. I'd rather have more juice in the tank than less, assuming it still fits in the same small footprint. If you were using a more powerful radio, even the relatively small 20-watt units like the Xiegu G90, this would require a bigger, more expensive battery to operate. Something like one of those Bio-NO batteries, which are great by the way, but much more expensive than these little Talent Cell guys. Next up, you need a way to connect the battery to the radio. And I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this one, but just be aware that there are different size barrel plugs. The way I put these boxes together, I like having a right angle plug on the radio side and a straight plug on the battery side. I'll link the one that I use in the description along with all this other stuff. And then we need a cable to attach our radio to the antenna. Again, not going to spend too much time on these little connector cables, but since I'm going to be deploying the middle of my antenna roughly 12 to 15 feet in the air, I went for a 25-foot coaxial cable. This gives me plenty of length for the height, plus a little bit extra for me to set up a small distance from the base of my antenna mast. Now there's a ton of different types of coax cable. I went with RG316 coax since it's highly efficient relative to how thin it is. This 25-foot section only bleeds off about 10% of the total wattage on the 40-meter band. And that's negligible, even when you're working with only 5 watts to start. I will warn you, RG316 is a pain to roll up. You want to avoid hard bends and crinks in your cable, and it's a micro skill in itself learning how to roll this thing up cleanly. Next up, the thing that goes on the other end of your coax cable, your antenna. Your antenna may be the single most important element of your setup. Everything could be perfect, but if your antenna is not tuned for the 40-meter band, none of this is going to work. We're going to use an antenna design that I adapted from the Tech Prepper YouTube channel. Great place for prepper comms info, by the way. Maybe the best place in all of YouTube. The important part is that the antenna is cheap to make. You can assemble one for about 20 bucks that will work just as well as any branded antenna that you can find online. For our purposes, we're using an antenna style called a half-wave dipole. Let me explain. The half-wave part references the length of the antenna. So the length of a half-wave dipole on the 40-meter band is, you guessed it, about 20 meters. And since this is a dipole, in other words, a two-wire antenna meeting at a center point, each leg needs to be about 10 meters. Unfortunately, you can't just make your antenna legs exactly 10 meters and expect to be resonant. At least in my experience, my 40-meter dipoles are significantly shorter than what the math says they should be. At 7.15 megahertz, the center of the 40-meter band, the wavelength mathematically is about 42 meters. So theoretically, you should need a 21-meter dipole. But in reality, when I plugged my antenna into my Nano VNA, a tool that measures tuning among other things, it was way too long. In the real world, my 40-meter antenna legs are resonant at around 372 inches, or just under 9.5 meters each. I don't know if this will hold true in your environmentals where you live, but that's been my experience as I've experimented with this tech where I live in the latter half of 2025. And since you need to hang your antenna in the air for it to work, we also need a simple, mobile way to deploy it. In terms of deploying your antenna, I'll show you later, but you hang the center in the air, either from a tree branch or an antenna mast of some kind, and then you run the legs downward at an angle, creating a sort of upside-down V shape. For what it's worth, hams call this antenna shape inverted V. The cheap way to do this is to toss a little cordage in your box. Tie the end of the cordage to a rock and toss it over a tree branch. Then use your cordage to pull the antenna up into the tree. But that takes a lot of time, and depending on your location, your tree, and your throwing skills, it might be a massive pain in the ass to actually accomplish. Alternatively, and this is my preferred approach, you can make a small portable antenna mast for your setup. That way you don't have to rely on trees or any other structures to get your radio on the air. You just need a flat section of earth somewhere away from power lines. Again, I'll show you exactly what mine looks like and how I set it up later in the video. But for now, let's discuss a few accessories that, while not essential, will make communicating with your people easier. In terms of recommended accessories, you can totally just shove all your stuff into a pouch or a backpack and call it a day. But personally, I like making kits, especially kits that fit into hard-shell cases. And given the fact that we're dealing with electronics and battery packs, I strongly recommend housing everything in one of Harbor Freight's Pelican clones. These are hard-shell cases that come with foam padding inside, and a rubber groove around the cap that keeps everything inside dry. I've never done a dunk test, so I don't recommend dropping your kit into a lake, but I can say with confidence that they'll handle any rain or snow you could possibly throw at them. These don't have the same premium feel as Pelicans, but they do the trick for about 1/3 the cost, so I've been using these things happily since I discovered them. And the sort of small pistol box, I think it's the Apache 1800, is the perfect size to house your little 5-watt NVIS kit. Next up, and this one should be free, assuming you have an extra set laying around the house, be sure to add a set of earbuds to your kit. Bigger over-the-ear earphones will work too, of course, but since space is at a premium in this little waterproof box, earbuds are my recommendation. I nearly put this one on the essentials list because the built-in speaker on the True SDX radio really, truly sucks balls. I can't make out jack from the onboard speaker unless the person on the other side is blasting me with wattage. But since our radios are operating on a modest 5 watts, there's a lot of times when we're working on the margins, just discernible above the noise floor. And in those less than ideal situations, when you're operating out of a noisy suburban environment, when the ionospheric conditions are not perfect, earbuds help you make out a weak signal. It's a no-brainer. Toss it in. I hesitate to recommend a separate microphone because there is a microphone built into the True SDX radio. And I'll admit the radio's microphone isn't the worst in the world. If you operate yours with no box, just loose in your hands like a Baofeng, this microphone is passable. But I'll be honest, it sucks using the built-in microphone when you're operating out of a waterproof radio box like I'm building here. You either need to raise the whole box to your face, or you need to bend over and talk at your groin. And yes, that does sound silly, but in all seriousness, speaking closely and consistently into your microphone is really important. I just mentioned how with 5-watt NVIS you're often working on the margins. Well, when you're on the margins, the little things matter. This is part of the trade-off in exchange for extreme radio portability. So though it costs about $30 plus shipping and a tariff, so realistically more like $50, the option exists to buy a separate microphone which you can attach to your radio with a cable. This one is from a small web store called G7 UFO, and these things work really well despite how tiny they are. It's the perfect thing for our little kit here. This is mostly a quality of life thing, but if you have a little extra cash, I do recommend it. And finally, I could have left this one off, but I think it's worth discussing. Get yourself some organization bags. There's plenty of room in this box to hold everything, but if you don't want everything mixed up into a rat's nest, I like these mesh bags. You can see right into them. You know immediately if you have all your stuff without opening anything up. I got a pack of like 5 of these mesh bags for $8 on Amazon. I'll keep the antenna in this one, and the mic and the earbuds in this little guy, which I'll then toss into the bigger pouch along with the coax cable. This keeps everything very nicely organized every single time I set up. And side note, this mesh organizer pack actually came with a bigger mesh bag that could probably hold the entire NVIS kit if you wanted to save weight and don't need the protection from the hard shell case. Okay, now's the fun part. Taking all of our parts and assembling them into a working HF radio kit. We're not going to do any drilling or use any fancy tools. We're just using these little Velcro dots to secure everything in place. If you want to set yours up exactly like mine, connect your radio to the power bank using the short barrel plug cable. You're going to align the left edge of the radio with the left edge of the battery. And then you're going to align the top of the barrel plug with the top of the battery. This way, when we put it in the box later, everything sits perfectly flush up against the upper left corner. Once you figure out exactly where you want to attach the radio to the battery, secure them together with the Velcro dots. Don't go overboard, by the way. One on each corner is plenty. Check it out. I actually got some slightly bigger Velcro squares to attach this radio/battery contraption to the hard shell case itself. And I actually like to put the other side of the hook and loop right up against the battery itself with the adhesive sticking out. You'll see why in a second. So this way, I can take our radio and battery, and I can attach it right inside the box, just by pushing it in. That adhesive will find the right location, and mold onto the box. Just providing some pressure to keep everything tight, and there you go. We have our radio and our battery secured inside the box. Now again, upper left corner is best if you want to fit all the other accessories inside the box. With the battery and the radio in place, this creates the perfect lane to hold your antenna pouch in the lower portion of the box. So let's get our antenna stuffed into its pouch. And boom, there it fits. This also creates a little zone in the upper right portion of the box. This is the perfect spot to hold cordage for hanging your antenna. Or maybe the charging cable for your battery pack. And then you can stuff your microphone and your earbuds into the little pouch. Then you can toss that into the coax cable pouch. And everything should sit right there on top. If you want to upgrade your kit, you can attach this pouch here to the top of the hard shell case, but that's just an option. Everything fits in here just fine regardless. Now in my personal NVIS kit, I did kind of similar by sewing this little mesh net and anchoring it to the cap with these command hooks. More of a quality of life, OCD satisfaction kind of thing, not a requirement. And that's it. The box is fully assembled. I could have gone the whole 3D print and insert, drill a pass-through into the side of the box for the antenna, and another through the other side for charging the battery, but I decided not to go the maximalist route. By setting it up this way, almost anyone can put it together with no tools at all. And by not drilling holes, we get the most weather-resistant version of this kit possible. So yeah, in my view, simpler is better for our purposes here. All right, let's finally take this bad boy into the field. Now that our comms box is complete, it's time to do a field deployment. So let's touch first on selecting a location. Simply put, you want to select an area with a low noise floor. Let me explain what that means. Think of the noise floor as radio background noise. The higher the background noise, the harder it is to make out weak, quiet signals. Like all things radio, these numbers are not always consistent, but generally speaking, the further away you are from power lines, electronics, and other electrical infrastructure, the lower your noise floor will be. That said, I have set up in parks situated in small cities and heard my 5-watt voice contacts clearly. If you get into regional HF comms yourself, you should test different locations. See which locations tend to have nice, quiet noise floors, and which locations tend to be loud and noisy. Hell, if you're lucky, you might have a low noise floor right in your own backyard, or in the open lot around the corner from your apartment. If I can give you any one practical tip, just stay away from infrastructure, especially power lines. So in terms of deploying the half-wave dipole antenna, my antenna mast actually isn't an antenna mast. It's a collapsible fishing rod that I got for about 30 bucks. They're small, light, and tend to cost less than actual purpose-built antenna masts. There's a ton out there, and you can find them online by searching for collapsing tenkara rod. One thing to note, you'll have to take out the top few sections because they are too thin and bend too much from holding your antenna in place. So pick a rod that's advertised as longer than you expect to actually need. The by-the-book height for NVIS antennas is 1/10 to 1/4 wavelength above the ground. So by the book, the center of your antenna should be about 4 meters or 14 feet off the ground on the low end. I'll tell you, in my practical experience, you can go a little bit lower. Talking with other BFC Discord members working these comms boxes, it seems that 10 to 12 feet is perfectly adequate for the center of your antenna. So anyway, extend your antenna mast, untie your antenna legs, and walk each leg out in opposite directions. Then, attach one end of your coax cable to the center of your antenna and clip the antenna to the top of your mast. I deploy my antenna mast with this little kit, a lightweight aluminum stake twisted into a 3/4 inch adapter and section of PVC pipe. Push that into the ground. And then the mast slides right over it. Now you have to create that inverted V shape that I mentioned earlier. The way I do this, I add 12 or 16 feet of cordage to the end of my dipole legs, and then stake the farthest end of cordage into the ground. After that, all that's left is to tighten everything up, and your half-wave dipole antenna is ready for NVIS. If you get it right, this type of pitch will shoot your radio signal straight up into the sky. This approach keeps the dipole ends around 3 feet off the ground without needing to carry any extra poles. For what it's worth, that is too close to the ground according to the by-the-book math. But simple is better, and we've had repeat success with this antenna setup. Next step, you're going to set up your base station. Sit down wherever you plan to operate. Connect the other end of your coaxial cable to your radio. Plug your earbuds into the audio jack and the microphone into the mic/key jack. And finally, you're going to power your radio on. There's actually no power button on this particular radio. All you have to do is flip the switch on the battery bank. Then it will light up and you're officially on the air. Assuming your antenna is properly tuned, you can now listen to the entire 40-meter band. The lower part of the band, below 7.15 megahertz, is generally for CW, what you would probably call Morse code. Here's what that sounds like. And the upper part of the band, above 7.15 megahertz, is for voice stuff. Let's listen to what that sounds like.
Good to hear this morning there, Pat. Good to hear you there. Good 5/8 signal, 5/8. I reduced my power to half because we got ice and stuff in the end this morning. Didn't want to tune properly, so hope you copy me okay. Good to hear you, Pat. Yeah, no problem copying you, Gary. You've got a great signal up there in Denver. You take care, sir, and have yourself a good day. I'll catch you tomorrow morning on the next one. At 7371. What a hustle. Anyway, I got it home and used pipe wrench, big pipe wrench to bend the front end straight again. Now, if you remember, that was not glide tubes on that front end. That was pressed steel channel. There's a pressed steel channel. That's correct, Dave. This is Charles. I'm in southern Connecticut, 25 degrees. You're coming in here at about a 5.9 plus 20. And, I don't know, you probably have my E-Cars number 8547. Back to you. Yes, sir. Good morning, Charles. Yeah, I don't think I ever spoke with you before. It's the first time, so I appreciate it. 20 over here. Congratulations. I'll give you some flowers there. And I got a message on there about this album this morning there. And you were talking about your outhouse in the backyard. You know, I've been in the outhouse. I thought that was all your property.
To be clear, these are not BFC Discord homies. These are other operators out there in the world, working out of their own ham shacks, likely with a lot more power than we are working with here. But now, all of that changes. It's time for the final and most exciting chapter of this video. Join me a few days from now for another field deployment. This time, we're past listening. We're doing a proof of concept test for our NVIS comms boxes. We are going to coordinate with 2 Black Flag civilian Discord members in my region. First up, we have Gorka Man at approximately 60 miles from my location, with another radio box that I assembled set to the same frequency that I'm set to here. We're going to listen to a plain speech transmission from him and see if we can make out what he is saying. By the way, I have my voice mic'd for you as usual, but I also have the radio's audio running directly into my camera. Let's start now. Can you make out his first plain speech message at 60 miles?
This is Gorka Man at 60 miles. There goes my hero. Watch him as he goes. I repeat, there goes my hero. Watch him as he goes.
And here is a second plain speech transmission from Gorka Man.
This is Gorka Man at 60 miles. Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. I repeat, look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
All right, next up, Gorka Man is going to transmit using the NATO phonetic alphabet. This takes more time, but it can help get an important message through on a weak signal.
This is Gorka Man. Golf, Delta, Sierra, Mike, Alpha, Charlie, Kilo. I repeat, Golf, Oscar, Delta, Sierra, Mike, Alpha, Charlie, Kilo.
All right, Now we're going to do the same test again, but this time with Hamtonio, who is set up roughly 120 miles away from me. Now I should mention that I did not assemble a box for this friend, but he used all the same parts and put it together himself, including his antenna. I don't think he has his stuff boxed up in a kit like mine, but all the parts that matter are more or less identical to what I built with you here. So let's listen in. Can we make out his first plain speech message from 120 miles away?
This is Hamtonio at 120 miles. I stand alone. Inside. I stand alone. I repeat. I stand alone. Inside. I stand alone.
Now we'll listen to Hamtonio's second plain speech transmission.
This is Hamtonio at 120 miles. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. I repeat, get up, come on, get down with the sickness.
And finally, the 120-mile transmission using the NATO phonetic alphabet.
This is Hamtonio. Papa, Alpha, Romeo, Oscar, Alpha, Charlie, Hotel. I repeat, Papa, Alpha, Romeo, Oscar, Alpha, Charlie, Hotel.
And I can't let myself off the hook. It's my turn to transmit to both other operators. And since they are not YouTubers, just friends helping me out, on their end, they have small speakers plugged into their radios, and they are recording the speaker sound via the video recording app on their cell phones. Anyway, now it's time for me to key up. Here's my first plain speech transmission from 60 miles out.
Into pieces. This is my last resort. I repeat, cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
And then that same message 120 miles away.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. I repeat, cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
And here is my second plain speech message, again from Gorka Man Station, 60 miles distance.
This is James. Wasting away again in Margaritaville. I repeat, wasting away again in Margaritaville.
Searching for my lost shaker of salt.
And then again from Hamtonio Station, 120 miles out. And finally, here's my NATO phonetic alphabet transmission, first at 60 miles, and then at 120 miles immediately after.
This is James. Bravo, uniform. Foxtrot, Echo, Tango, Tango. I repeat, Bravo, uniform. Foxtrot, Echo, Tango, Tango.
And with that, we're all done with our proof of concept demonstration. Now it's time to talk takeaways. So, Did the little $200 comms box actually do the thing? From where I'm standing, mostly yes. Here's the nuanced takeaway. Low power NVIS is not magic, and it is not 100%, but it can work, and it's mostly predictable. When the ionosphere is cooperating, when your antenna is actually tuned, and when you're not operating under a massive buzzing power line, 5 watts can absolutely reach across a region. And while you can't base everything on a single data point, we proved with our tests that this low power NVIS comms box concept is viable. More extensive testing to come in a future video, by the way. And switching gears a little bit, I touched on this at the top of the video, but this is not a replacement for handheld radio. This is not something you casually throw in your pocket. This is a base station kit. There's no way around it. You're going to have to deploy a little temporary radio base camp. But the benefit is massive. Terrain is no longer an issue. Mountains are nothing. You can reach your loved ones who live on the other side of the state, not just the other side of town. And another important takeaway, regional off-grid comms are no longer a rich guy's game. For a long time, HF felt like this expensive, complicated world where you had to drop multiple grand, build a shack, and study for months before you ever press a transmit button. But with these tiny, affordable QRP radios, cheap batteries, and a simple dipole antenna, the barrier to entry has never been lower. If you and a few friends can agree on a frequency and a check-in window, build the same antenna, and practice a little bit, you can actually communicate in a grid-down scenario. So if you want to take this off of YouTube and into the real world, my advice is this. Don't just build the box. Build the box and test it. Test it from your backyard. Test it from a park. Test it from the middle of nowhere. Figure out what time of day works best where you live. Write up a radio check-in plan for your people, because the radios aren't an end to themselves. The whole point of this is staying connected to your loved ones. The whole point is to coordinate with, or at minimum, confirm that the people you care about are safe after a disaster. The reason I made this video is because I want normal people to have options. I want working class folks, families, disaster relief crews, search and rescue teams, mutual aid groups, whatever, to have a way to reach each other when systems fail. We're stronger when we're communicating. We're stronger when we're working together. If you stuck around until now, thank you. If you'd like to support this channel, please follow the link in this video description to the Black Flag Civilian Subscribe Star page. Any level of support gets you into the BFC Discord server, where we have a mixture of casual community, gear talk, and also serious defense and preparedness education going on. Until next time, take care of each other. Do I need a forward assist right now? And I do not have one?
Yo, the forward assist!
Oh, fuck.
No!
It finally happened.
Carl Cassard is in shambles right now.